2 hours to build. LR32 MFT. This is a fantastic tool. I am really loving this thing. When I said that it took 13 days and 2 sheets of plywood, that was coming up with a design and different iterations. This thing really radically changed. The slowdown though is making it that spacing between this row of holes and the row of holes that are drilled with the bit. That spacing right there. Because if you're off 1/10 of a millimeter times 10 holes, which is just about half the bench, you're already a millimeter off. So the only point I made was take your time. Don't just go off the dimensions because you almost can't see it even with the most refined measuring tool to drill that hole. So my suggestion was, before you drill these 4 holes, you've got the whole system built, clamp this to this and cut some test holes on some scrap, measure it with the good quality tape measure like this fast cap one, which will give you exactly the layout that you need. You hook it on the end of your test cut, go to say the 10th hole, the 5th hole or whatever, and minus 10 millimeters, because seeing the center of the hole might be, you could be off a millimeter and not see it with your eye. But if you go to the edge and you should be at 960, which is the 10th hole in, you know the edge of the hole is 950. So I go, right, 950, I'm done. 10 holes in. And then I can, with this still clamped off, I can drill these 4 holes. Obviously I wouldn't have the bench dogs in yet. So these 20 millimeter holes, which are perfectly lined up and easy to do because you've done those with the LR32, you just drill those 4 holes with your bit, with the drill, and then do one more test cut just to make sure. Because remember, this is one and done, set it and forget it. This is easy to use once you've built it properly. So you've got it all dialed in. You take your same scrap that you've already cut, flip it over, flip it around, cut a new set, a pair of holes, and march it up. I said 5 before, but the more I think about it, 10 would be even better. If you're off, then take a breath, and you've already drilled these 4 holes. Just go ahead, grab some dowel, put some glue on it, clamp it in there. That's where it'll take a little bit longer because you got to wait for the glue to dry. And then you sand those off, and then at that time, you'll know exactly, because you'll know in 10, if you're off half a millimeter, you're going to know how much to adjust it. It's going to be slight. And I give you a dimension in the plans from the edge of the rail, not the splinter guard, but the metal part itself, and the edge of the MFT guide is 103 millimeters. I cut a block. This is a one and done. You don't do this again. This isn't setting up. This is just to make those holes. And put that in there and then clamp it. And then go to the other side, put it right in there. You can see how perfectly that fits, and clamp it. Then do your test cut. And then if you're off, if you got to go a little bit longer, then just use a feeler gauge and figure out exactly what you need to go, and use a feeler gauge. And by loosening this up, if it needs to go wider, then you just put a feeler gauge and then move it out that little bit on both sides. Reclamp it, double check it with your feeler gauge. And if you need to go closer, then run this through the table saw, that small amount, and then test it and make sure that you've reduced it by the amount that you're off. Again, we're talking about 1/10 of a millimeter here. And you get that in, and then it's going to be, again, set it and forget it. Keep it simple. So it's easy to build. 2 hours, even with all of that. It's less if you get it right the first time, but that's going to be tough to do. So 2-3 rounds of getting it perfect, and then you can lock these bad boys in, and you know you're going to be right on. I've looked at the other jigs and things and ideas that people have been using the LR32 to make the MFT table. And all of them that I have seen are, you have to set up, you have to, each bench top is treated individually. So you got lines to make, you've got some other things you got to do to clamp and set up. And again, I didn't want to do that. I wanted set it and forget it. The way I built it with the width and stuff of this, and the reason for all these holes, is that it can be used to build the Paulk Smart Bench, the Paulk Smart Big Bench, which is wider. Doesn't matter how long they are. With this, we can step it up as long as we need. It can be used to build the router tables, the cradles. When I tackle a design project, there's a couple of parameters that I think about. Does it already exist, either in a form that's already designed that I can build, or can I just buy it? There's something out there for even $200 or $300. By the time I spend my time and energy designing and getting it right, it's cheaper to buy the tool if it's designed right. If it's not some Rube Goldberg like 20 levers and too many ways that it can be off. That I see some tools that you can see there was thought that went into them, and there's a lot of quality, but they're not out in the field using them, and they've made this thing that's just too many potential problems for setup, and or setup takes too long. And you know, I'm a realist working out in the field as a builder, carpenter, woodworker, and I know that you got to have things that are repetitive, that you can trust, that are fast to set up, and you just pull them out of the truck and use them. The Paulk Smart LR32 MFT Jig will not take you 2 pieces of plywood in 13 days, and if you do take the 2 hours to build it, you're going to get that paid back in spades if you're a Festool LR32 owner. If you want to get a set of plans to build one of these, any of the workbenches, or the Smart Wood Shop, there's a link in the description of this video down below. Mahalo.